Hello and welcome back. It is me again, and today we will be talking about what the Bible does and does not say regarding LGBTQ+. The occasion for this is I wanted to do something theological today, and this is the last such theological topic that I can realistically do in the month of June, and I felt it was appropriate to do it in June. But also, bit of a forward here. I will do my best to make this approachable and, very presentable. I understand this is an extremely sensitive topic to a lot of people. I want to still talk about this anyway from an educational standpoint, talk about different theories as to what certain things mean and what things do or don't say, or what people may believe. So I would encourage you to, if this is something you are interested in or passionate about, even if you aren't that interested in it, that you would wait until the very end of this video, that you would watch the whole thing before commenting, because it is not my intention to disparage anyone at all. So please try to listen to the whole context of this video. Anyway, that is enough of an intro. Let's get to actually playing the game. Here we have one final completion mark for Azazel. So let's get into it. No good musical break, so we'll go into it straight away. I am looking for a trinket. Where is there a trinket? Anyway, yeah, so there's a lot to talk about today, so I am not gonna dilly-dally too much here. Nice. Nice. Oh, nice. Do I go in? Yes, I do. Blank rune. Okay. I got it twice in a row. Oh. Again? Well. Okay. I guess that wasn't really worth it. Anyway, I want to start off by talking a little bit about gender and the Bible, because I think you'll find overall, that my opinions and perspectives on this topic are a little progressive. Not completely progressive, but certainly not strictly conservative either. Conservative in the general sense, not in the American political identity sense. But yeah, starting off with gender. So, one thing I would like to point out, although I'm not actually sure the best way to segue into this, so I'll just awkwardly talk about it up front. No, I don't want that. I should have kept pair throw. I'm regretting it. Yeah, so I don't have a great way to actually introduce this segment or section, but again, I want to talk about it anyway. And yeah, I'll take the Bible. That's pretty good, right? Is that, and this is gonna sound like I'm co-opting some terminology that maybe I shouldn't here. Sorry, that probably sounds really suspicious now, but ow. What I basically mean is, I am, a white Christian guy. I'm this is gonna sound a little strange, but stick with me. God himself, God the Father, actually, in a very literal way, identifies himself as being a father figure. This is, I think, an appropriate way to start off the conversation about gender in the Bible, because God, the Father, that is, has no physical body and therefore cannot have a gender, right? Oh. Why is that bucket off? Like, why is this bucket a little lower than the others? God the Father cannot have a physical gender because he doesn't have a physical body. Shocker. So then why is God the Father in the first place? Again, that's because you can interpret it as God literally identifying as such. Whoa, buddy. When God first appears, I don't recall if this is to Abraham or Isaac, or not Isaac, definitely not Isaac, to Abraham, or if this is to Moses, but God really does call himself the father of humanity, which is notable because in a lot of religions, a creator being or creator deity is often the mother, or often a mother, a goddess, if you will, such as Gaia in, I believe, Greek mythology. Let me know if I've gotten that one incorrect. But generally, a lot of creation stories, again, involve the deity in question that created being a mother, and that there is some sort of labor process involved in creation. Not just that the creator deity, worked hard, but that there's an actual struggle involved, and maybe some sort of cost as well in creating. But with... Oh, nice. But with God the Father being a father figure instead, there's not this labor. Instead, it's a labor of love, if you will, or a labor more in the sense of a work, a craft, or a project, not as in the process of giving birth. And that also means that whereas... I'm not great with dealing with these guys as Azazel. I don't know why. I'm just not. There we are. Whoa. I spy with my little eye some good things in this room. So with a goddess or female great spirit or whatever have you, I don't mean to... Maybe that sounds a little dismissive or offensive. I apologize. There's also this implication here, and I don't want to take that. I really don't. There's an implication that there is some sort of direct relationship between the creator and the created, just as there is a direct relationship between a mother and her child, and also so many pills. What is going on? Oh, that's quite good. That's quite good too. I'll take that too. One of these has to be bad. Okay. Well, none of these so far. I still need... Wait, no, I don't need a trinket. I'm so... My brain is so wired for... whatchamacallit. Unlocking the tainted characters in the first place. Also, I didn't even need to use the Bible, because I have light. Uh-huh. One of these has to be bad. Okay. I'll keep the fool on me. I didn't actually pay attention if there was a cursed room in here. I guess not. Yeah, it's probably fine. On the bright side, that rock got reflected. That doesn't always happen. On the bright side, I can get 2 boss items from this mirrored realm. That was a very targeted tier. Hopefully this will make up for the bad items I've received so far. My sneezes need to be bigger. In order to get these flies, that is. There! Good, good, good. Ooh, very tempting, very tempting. I'll get the knife, why not, why not? Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so with a mother figure being the creator, there's this direct implication that the created are related to the creator through some direct process that not even the creator can really change. But with God, the creator being a father figure instead, there is this implication instead that there isn't necessarily any relationship between the creator and the created, except that we are his work of sorts, you know? And that fits in pretty nicely with a lot of Christian theology. I just thought that was a neat aside, that, you know, God doesn't technically have a gender, so, but, you know, identifies himself as male, and for good reason. For appropriate reason. Okay. Nice, nice, nice. That's a trinket. Don't be the tick. Okay, I can accept that. Whoa, boy. Oh, I do not like when the broken modem does that to me. As much as I appreciate how you get rid of some of the tiers, I have made the mistake of running into them before, and finding that they're a lot more real than I first expected. You can hurt yourself on them, basically. Only one bomb still, though. Huh. So, let's move on from talking about God's gender to start talking about ours. So, the first thing I want to tackle in talking about LGBT and how it is or is not covered or mentioned in the Bible is to talk about gender identity, first of all. I will talk about homosexuality at the end because that is, of course, a very large and very important topic to a lot of people, a very sensitive topic even, and I do have the 2 bombs, so I guess I'll skedaddle with it. Although I do really want to blow some of those up. But oh well. I'll go in here. Yes, yes. This will do quite nicely. I guess I can get rid of all my health here. Nice! Okay, let me see if I remember where the shop was. No, that was the mirror room. Don't get it twisted so early. Okay. There is the mirrored shop still. Those aren't great for me. Oh, that's pretty good. But I would prefer to keep the Bible, actually. That would get me a lot of resources, wouldn't it? I did say it's important to get it early in a run. So there we are. So, what does the Bible say about gender identity? Well, actually, not much at all. In fact, the only times the Bible ever really mentions gender identity is within respect. With respect, not within respect, that doesn't make sense. With respect to marriage. That is seemingly the only time God really cares about gender identity. And I'll hope for a reroll later on that, because it literally, you know, I'm guaranteed whatchamacallit room. Planetarium. Just with the formula that I use for skipping item rooms here. Whoa, okay. Yeah, I ran into that one. In a very literal sense. Also, that hurt me for a full heart. Ouch. Ooh, ooh, okay. Nice. Not bad, not bad. Uh-oh. Okay, I am not great at avoiding these guys as Azazel, and also, okay, they don't get knocked back either. That is important to know. Whew! Ah, nice. Got one fairly early, all things considered. It is much welcome, though. Where are you? Another? Another. I only have a luck of +1. Why is it so... Oh. Okay. I suppose I'll head straight to the boss then. Since I believe it gives me a full heal effect, I think. It will certainly show me the full map and reveal, I want to say... not reveal. It should basically activate the sun card, but I don't remember if it's upon entering the boss or what. No! Oh! Okay. Okay, okay. Uh-oh. Is this a death? Don't be the fart boy. Okay, it's not, but this isn't much better. Don't do it. Ah! You scared me. Whoa, boy. Don't. Whoa, that move always hits me. No! I am a fool. Okay, well, you know... The more... all the better for talking more, you know? That's the real takeaway here. Give me something good. I need a pick-me-up. That is not a pick-me-up. That's a let-me-down. That is pretty nice, and it's a starting trinket! Which, again, I don't actually need, but I, you know, feel like I need. Uh-oh. Okay, good. Glad they don't bring their spikes out just yet. Ooh. A stellar start to the run, though. I must say. Okay. Okay. What is over there? Is it a mini-boss, perhaps? I will resume talking about... Yep, sure enough. I will resume talking about the topic in a minute. There's that audio bug again. Okay, I guess it's just related to the unicorn effect. The invincibility. Huh. Curious. Sneeze. Get sneezed on. Loser. Hey, you stop that. Good, good, and I got a key. I want to sneeze on him. I wanted to sneeze... Well, okay, that's kind of funny looking. I wanted to sneeze on you while midair. Well, that wasn't that exciting. Marbles! Ooh. I like several of those, but it's not worth it to try my luck. You know? I do really like Lucky Toe, and I like you. But which would I take? Okay. You know, it's not too late to restart a run, so, in other words, I'm gonna go see if I can't swallow this toe real quick. Normal things said by normal people. No, no, no. Sure enough. Fantastic. That is very nice. Very nice to have that permanently added. Because that's more than just +1 luck. Ah. Good start. Good start. Not great start, but good start. Okay. Woo! So again, talking about where I left off was in... Did I knock him into the other enemies? Oh, Pinky. Pink Eye. Ah! No! I left off on talking about gender identity, and I said that there is basically no real gender identity expressed in the Bible, really. At least not nearly to the extent that people expect there to be. Well, I have an idea what I want to do with this. I want to get rich quick, although I'll actually hold off on it until I see if there's a more fitting room here. Oh, yes. Oh, was that really not close enough? That's probably the other secret room. And in fact... Haha! Who was right? The answer is me. Hair throw! Nice. And the hermit. Well, that would have been nice a minute ago, but that's okay. Okay. I'll continue exploring and then I'll use Yera. So my claim is that the Bible only ever talks about gender identity with respect to marriage. That's the only time it really ever comes up. That's where you get verses like Ephesians, where you talk about the specific roles of husbands and wives. I did an episode on that a long time ago now, I believe, but basically the quote-unquote conservative formula for marriage is actually not as conservative as you'd expect, but that doesn't mean it's particularly progressive either. That's the TLDR for that. Yeah, I'll blow you up. Cool. Thank you. And now I can I should have used that. Pretty definitively use this over here. And then... come on. Okay, I got the nickel. Oh, don't forget pair throw. And that was a hermit, right? Anyway, I won't go into depth about marriage because I already did an episode on that previously, although that was a long time ago, but still. I will, however, at least mention briefly that other places where you could say that the Bible talks about gender identity would be, say, the list of virtues in a virtuous woman that shows up in the end of, I believe it's Proverbs. No! And you didn't blow up either of the fires. But, contrary to what you may expect about that passage, almost none of them are actually about gender. The vast majority of the list of virtues that can be seen in a virtuous woman are things like being smart and being good with kids and owning a small business, which is actually one of them. Again, not as conservative as you may expect. There we are. Oh, no! I overshot it. Sure, I'll take that. Aha! Ow! Cool. Cool. But there are really no other locations in the Bible except maybe the Garden of Eden, kind of, where gender identity or gender roles are really ever described or defined. Almost everything else about gender identity is cultural, actually. Not in the Bible, but in the culture that the Bible was written in, it seems. I want in there. But oh well. I might use pair throw here, because those aren't great, but I do have spending money, you know? Also, I'm really curious... Ooh. What is up at the top of the map? If there's a secret room all the way up there. Oh, don't be like that. Who is it? Okay, you. Ah! Oop. Yay! Yeah, there's no reason for you to be up here. Well, I guess there is. There's really nowhere else for you to go. I'll use that first, just in case it's a... Okay. I'll do that. Okay. No money, that's fine. Yeah, you could say that the Garden of Eden talks a little bit about gender. I mean, it does literally talk about, you know, gender, as in, like, biological sex, because Adam and Eve and all that, but it doesn't really say that men should be like this or women should be like that. You could, again... Not again, but, you could try and make an argument about... I'm not sure about this. I'll try it. You could make an argument about gender being, or gender roles, or gender identity being portrayed indirectly through a variety of characters that show up in and throughout the Bible. Nice. And I'll also go in here. I'll take it. Sneeze. Sneeze. Nice. But again, I would argue that is just a cultural understanding of gender. For instance, if you say that Samson is very masculine because he, you know, was this great warrior who killed people and whatever, well, are you saying that in order to be a great man, you also must kill someone in battle? No. I think that's fairly obvious, but when talking about the story of Samson, we're talking about a, you know, the culture of the Middle East thousands of years ago. It's a pretty different culture from today, you know, in a lot of ways. Today, and also in America, pretty different culture. Shocker. My point is that it's also difficult to ascribe meaning or intention behind some of the gender identities that are presented in the Bible, because it, again, seems highly relative. There's no objective, this is good, this is bad, this is what you should or should not do. And, you know, that was a whole lot of talking around this point, but all of that is to say that at least outside of the context of marriage and romance, there is no reason, I see anyway, to condemn anyone, Christian or not, on the basis of being gender queer or transgender. But things do change somewhat. Maybe a little... Okay, that doesn't... Whatever, I'll take that. Things do change when you start talking about... Whoa. Whoa, that was close. In the context of marriage. Because that is the one... Ooh, yes, I'll take that. That is the one point where there are some gender roles. They aren't super... Again, it's not quite what people expect, because it doesn't really say much about femininity or masculinity, just that the man in the, you know, a marriage should be, in the Christian context, in the context of Christianity, marriage is a sanctified relationship with vows before God that is between a man and a woman. So that does put a hamper, a damper, or whatever. Yeah, it can be pretty uncomfortable for people. It's uncomfortable for me right now to talk about it, even if you can't tell. But that's because I'm trying my best to relay the truth to relay what the Bible does and does not say accurately. Hey, no, I wanted... Okay. Wanted to sneeze that guy out of there. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is some real deja vu, isn't it? I got another Curse of Darkness. Oh, no, it was not Curse of Darkness. Oh. Well, I would like to rescind those comments. Why am I so good at finding the boss? Accident. Ew, gross. I mean, I know the answer, but... I should really not try to move towards the, super secret room, shouldn't I? A single card, the Emperor, useless. And some stuff. Okay. Cool. So, there are a lot of things that I could say about the context of marriage in regards to all of this. I will take the doorstop, please, and I'll save that key for a minute. Again, I'm not talking about marriage from a traditional perspective or from the perspective of what the Bible directly says about it, because there was another episode about that already. Oh, neat. Luck up, range down, I am perfectly fine with that. But I'll get to a broader list of points to think through at the end when we get back to homosexuality, although a few of those considerations do apply to a few of those do apply to, oh boy, people who are transgender as well, and this is not in the offensive way that it sounds like. I am not equating trans people to homosexuals. That is a very white Christian way of putting it, I guess. It is a rehash of last run. Huh. Weird. Freaky. I mean, you know? I'll take the potato peeler. And I'll use it, even. And then... Tears up, nice. And then I'll take the Bible, and I'll use Pair Throw. Again, you'll just have to wait until the end when I do talk about the... Ooh, Black Tooth. When I do talk about this directly, I do not intend... Brainworm! No! I want it! I want it! I want it! I want it! Oh, I want all of the things! There's so many things I want! Ugh. I'll wait until the end to actually go over this list. Woo! But, again, there are some points on that list for consideration for anyone who is in a similar position. That's I think, a decent way of saying that. Not a fantastic way of saying it, but a decent way. Give me something good. Oh. Okay. That's fine, too. I haven't blown you up yet. More money, though. You don't have any soul hearts. Nope. Nope, you certainly do not. Also, I want to avoid bombing that fine gentleman over there because I don't want to blow up the donation machine on accident. What do I care more about, brainworm or the tooth? I don't know. I actually don't know. Brainworm is so much better for clearing rooms, so I guess I'll take brainworm with me. Ugh. I need more health. Here's what I can do. Give me a soul heart. Oh. No soul heart. Of course, Meat Boy can't reach you. Oh, but look at that. Ain't that fancy. No, no. Okay. Come on, come on. Okay. Okay. Not bad, not bad. I don't like it. I should have saved Pair Throw. But it's a mom item. Glyph of Balance. Okay. I do appreciate the soul hearts. Yeah, this is so nice. This is so nice with the brainworm. I do have to admit it. But maybe, just maybe, I have a plan that I could hatch that might work out. It could work out. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Ooh. Death. And nothing. Okay. Well, I tried. Brainworm it is. So, let me re-emphasize the last major point I made before moving on. Ooh. And that is that I see no reason why the church cannot be accommodating and even welcoming of members, not just non-Christians, but members who are Christian, who express gender identities that are queer or transgender. However, things are complicated once you start talking about marriage, because, again, I'm getting so many soul hearts. Of course, it was the very next one. Well, not that it actually could be, if you think about it. I should have flown in there. Oh well. That's not how RNG really works, but whatever. I feel like complaining. I will absolutely take that. I hate greed shops, or greed fights in shops. Ooh. I heard that. Yeah, okay. What are you doing over here, chest? I guess it is the center of the room. Anyway. Again, marriage... Okay, just even more hearts. Cool. Marriage is harder because there we do have a little more of a gender role. I mean, actually a lot more because, you know, it's... Although there are progressive churches out there, generally... Wow, okay. They must have reworked Glyph of Balance if you don't have any red hearts. That must be what's going on here. That's the best way I can figure it. That would be okay. I'm not interested. Whoa, whoa. Ah. I got touched. Where... Did I get the third button already? I wasn't really paying attention. Also, that's probably one of the secret rooms, right? Yeah. Yeah. Where's the second one, though? Okay. Well, oh, I got my bombs back. Very nice. If I were the second one where... Oh! You stay there. Yeah, okay, no effect. That is a shame. That is a real shame. I didn't put that fire out? Anyway. Let me... Okay, I did get all three. Let me dive into the meat and potatoes of today. I think I've done enough dancing around the bush. Oh, went the wrong way. That's not quite the right term, but, you know, whatever. Let's talk about what the Bible says about homosexuality. This is a big topic because it's controversial, not because it's actually very much in the Bible at all. I mean, it is in the Bible, but it's... Well, you'll see, you'll see. But let's get into what the Bible does or does not say about homosexuality, because again, this is a very relevant thing to learn for a lot of people. This is something that has affected a lot of people's lives, generally negatively, to be perfectly honest with you. But it is important to discuss it, to understand it, to see what the Bible says about it. I messed that up, didn't I? Nope, I didn't. I just messed up the part where I got hit twice, because that wasn't supposed to happen. That was pretty nice, though. But apparently I get tons and tons of soul hearts, so I guess it's fine if I take a few hits. Yeah, I don't know where the second secret room is. It's probably somewhere stupid. Actually, it's probably somewhere that makes total sense, but I just can't see it. Go get him! Oh, it's a dead-end rail! I've never seen that before. That's cool. Go get him, Meat Boy. Go get him, Meat Boy. Well, I got him. Okay, I'm fine with that. I'll accept that. Oh, I do really want that. I was kind of hoping for a Krampus fight, so I might take damage. I passed up Siren's Song. That is my shadow. I don't really care for that. Yeah, I guess we just go. So, there are only 3 places in the Bible that discuss homosexuality. Only 3. And in fact, only one of those 3 makes any sort of definitive moral statement about it. Intentional moral statement about it. And I have the bombs for that, why not? I should have just used the Bible, but whatever. So, statements on homosexuality appear in both the Old and New Testament. But starting with the Old Testament, we have Leviticus 18:22 in a big list for context here, because context is critically important, believe it or not, for a lot of things in life. Oh, I can't actually take that. Not yet. Ooh. I can't take that because it's gonna put it on the end of my health, and then I'm gonna lose it. Also, the fact that I have a heart container is problematic for, my trinket that I just swallowed, apparently. That I didn't even realize. That is kind of interesting. I just unlocked that. Whoa, okay. Interesting room. You didn't give me pennies? Aw. So, in Leviticus, chapter 18, this is part of a... Oh, neat. This is part of a big list of sins. And among the big list of sins, where it generally just says, like, hey, don't do this, don't do that, this is wrong, so on and so forth, the Bible actually kind of goes out of its way here to specifically say that homosexuality, or a man lying with a man, to be more exact, is not just a sin, but is, and this is the Bible's words here, not mine, an abomination to God. Oh, because it's a Zazel stump, and it's me. So I got the smallest beam on record, I guess. That was kind of funny. So, the Old Testament, at the very least, is pretty unambiguous that homosexuality is, according to the Bible, to the Old Testament, quite wrong. Unambiguously wrong, I would say. And I think you might agree with that. What does the New Testament say about homosexuality? Because... Ah, great. Oh, perfect. Because, there were a number of Old Testament rules, particularly dietary rules, that were done away with in the New Testament. A lot of cultural rules in the Old Testament were done away with because of Jesus. Although there's some interesting theory that I mentioned in the Paul episode where there's more modern debate as to whether Paul was really saying that those simply don't apply at all versus actually it's cultural, and if you are Jewish, a Jewish convert to Christianity, you are still expected to obey those rules all the same, which is an interesting theory. I don't think I said that in the most elegant terms, but what else is new? Well, I only have one more shop after this. Well, didn't mean to buy that, but that's okay. Cool. So many hanged men. Bye-bye. Nice. And we take you, and then we go here, and oh. Well, this will get me... Yeah, this will get me at least a stat up. Speed and range. Well, I don't need range, but thank you for it anyway. Oh. And there. Don't I have another card around here somewhere? I guess not. Ah, I have you, though. Maybe I shouldn't have taken that, so that way I could get more soul hearts. Oh well. So, what does the New Testament say about homosexuality if the Old Testament is very much against it? Whoa, okay, that didn't quite go in the right direction, but not terrible either. We got soul hearts again. Paul, specifically, is the only one who mentions homosexuality in the New Testament, and he mentions it twice. Once in Romans chapter 1, verses 26 through 27, and once in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 through 10. Come on, dude. Okay, I'll come back for you. And the important thing to know about both of those is that Paul doesn't actually talk about homosexuality as the subject in either of those verses. Or rather, in those specific verses, I guess, sure, technically, yeah. I mean, more generally, let's put you over here. Paul is not actually dedicating a section of these letters to the Romans or to the Corinthians to talking about the morality of homosexuality. That is not what is going on at all. In the Romans passage, hold on. Let's go from the bottom. There. In the Romans passage, Paul is doing a fairly general argument. Oh, cool. That the world is bad and immoral. That is, more broadly speaking, what is going on in that whole section, in his entire introduction to Romans. I didn't get damage. Well, I got fire rate and luck at least. And Paul talking about homosexuality is just one bullet point in that argument where Paul says that, oh, yeah, I guess he did sneak up on me, where Paul says that it is unnatural. But is it really that unnatural? Because, you know, oh, see you. Nice. Because, you know, scientific studies on animals in like the past 20 years or so have shown that there are some naturally occurring same-sex relationships that show up in nature. They're not the norm, but they do exist in the natural world all the same. Ow! Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Although, generally, you know, we don't ever ascribe any romantic feelings to any animals. I mean, definitely not in like a yucky sense, but in a sense that animals we generally don't consider to be capable of having romantic feelings for one another. And of course, because I lost my rib of greed. Oh, cool. But there are, for example, male-male pairings that show up with penguins. And there is even an argument as to why that sort of pairing shows up, because male-male pairings with penguins are able to adopt basically penguin children that don't have parents. And so there is a sort of evolutionary argument for homosexuality then in some cases. So it's not as unnatural as it may have appeared to Paul thousands of years ago. The second passage where Paul mentions homosexuality is again 1 Corinthians. I'll take it. I will not take that. Chapter 6, verses 9 through 10. And in that, I believe, if memory serves, Paul mentions... Ah, great. I'm not doing great on not getting hit, but that's okay, I have plenty of health. Paul mentions homosexuality as one of many of a long list of general sins to avoid. And so there is some debate there as to what specifically Paul might be talking about. I mean, he's talking about homosexuality, but why? What does he mean specifically? And is it right to directly compare it to adultery or fornication, that is, having sex before marriage? Or some of the other sins on that list? I should actually look up that list just to be extra certain about it, so hold on just one second. 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And this was verses 9 through 10. Yeah, do you not know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived, neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who have sex with men, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. So again, just a long list of sins, which has led some people to question, does Paul mean when he says men who have sex with men or men who lie with men, could that mean something more like sexual assault or, the R word? And generally, I'd say no. I don't think that's... Let's see, just making final mental checklist here. I guess we're ready. Right? Do I have... Yeah, the marbles. Yeah, I have some cracked keys if I wanted. So, could Paul be referencing something more heinous than simply homosexuality? There is sort of an argument for that, but I don't think it's that convincing of an argument, to be perfectly honest with you. Whoop. Tasty. More luck. I'm really regretting giving up the rotten tooth now. That would have been pretty nice. Ooh. I will take you. I'm very curious how this actually combines now. Okay, it doesn't. Cool. Great. There is a common theory that I have occasionally seen where someone will say, oh, Paul or the Bible doesn't actually condemn homosexuality in general. It instead should have condemned pederasty. It should have been more specific. Pederasty is the ancient Greek practice of an older man taking in a younger boy as a very close apprentice. That also features quite the sexual relationship too. That maybe Paul should have, or meant to condemn that, but condemned homosexuality in general instead, or something. That's what he meant. But there is a Greek word for pederasty, and so Paul should have, if that is truly what he meant and wasn't talking about men who prefer men, then maybe he really should have just used that word. So, also looking through my items, I don't have any tear effects, do I? Yeah, I'll continue with this. There's the first cracked key. Actually, can I figure out the red room? Maybe. Looking at this, I guess I could try over here. Or up here, rather. Oh, hello. So, maybe you can argue still leniency with what Paul exactly means when he talks about homosexuality, but I think, at the very least, it is abundantly clear that Paul is not talking about... Oh, I can't go up there? No. That Paul is not talking about... He's not talking about pederasty. This is not him confusing homosexuality with pederasty. Hmm. Another thing to keep in mind about this is, although there is a lot of discussion over whether Paul truly wrote all of the letters ascribed to Paul, I don't like those. Yoink. Finally, damage. Keep in mind that Romans and 1 Corinthians are definitive Pauline letters. They are letters that Paul is very much considered to have written. They are very central to his theology, in fact, so there is no doubt that Paul actually wrote these. For better or for worse, these are Paul's actual words. Definitively so. Although there still have been people who have claimed that perhaps I'll absorb that, I think. There have been people who have claimed that maybe the arguments against homosexuality were added later on by later editors or later church fathers or something like that. I don't find that very likely at all, because it all seems very central to what Paul is saying, even if you may disagree about the veracity of it, the truth of it, of everything that he says. For, like, what I mainly mean by that is, you know, whether or not homosexuality is unnatural. Ow! Yeah, I'm not great at that. Oh, good. I got my health back, though. I am so fast. That was unreasonably fast. Well, you could give me something good, I suppose. Also, bit of a side note, but when Paul talks about how homosexuality is unnatural, specifically he says that, you know, men lying with men is unnatural. The next verse, he says that it is also just as unnatural for women to trade the natural away for the unnatural. You know, in a literary sense, it's pretty clear that he's talking about, you know, lesbianism, women lying with women, I guess, but it's also possibly in reference to something like sex toys, which, fun fact, existed in ancient Greece. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay, well, you're not gonna give me anything by the looks of it, so we'll skedaddle. So, perhaps, according to Paul, although this point isn't as clear as the other points, as his opinion on homosexuality, that Paul is also against the use of any sort of sex toy as unnatural. And yoink. Fire rate, that's what I want to see. And I've gotten even faster. I can still go faster. Faster still. I can get there. Put me in, coach. Now, let me get to the list of points that I want to make about this topic in total. These are things to consider whether you are a Christian yourself or not. These are things to consider from the Christian perspective, and I don't care about either of those. I will happily absorb them. I'm gonna vor them. No, sorry, void them. You misheard. You misheard. That is... That's not bad. I might take it. I'll take it. I don't need shot speed or range. I think they may have also tried to give me something like fire rate, which I may be capped at already. I wouldn't be surprised. So this is, again, a list of points to consider just about homosexuality and Christianity in total, but it also applies to some other sins as well. And I guess I move on now. Sure. So, the first thing I want to say is that compromise is bad in this, because this compromising is a wonderful tool when it comes to other people, when it comes to politics, but this is not politics. This is religion. This is a claim of moral truth. To compromise in religion is to say that religion doesn't really matter. Now, again, there is a spectrum of beliefs. There are certainly more progressive Christians who believe that Christianity should perfectly condone homosexuality, but my point is not in... My point is not that... Oh, hi, Bob. I'll take you. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I hope this means I accidentally kill myself with Bob's rotten brain. That'd be a hilarious ending to this. My point here is that... Hold on, I've partially lost it. I want to make sure I remember it completely. I want to say this as elegantly as possible. There is a question when it comes to, say, pastors or preachers or anyone else who claims religious authority of why are you preaching? Are you preaching... Okay. Are you preaching for the sake of winning people over, or are you preaching for the sake of, you know, spreading the gospel, the good news, doing what's right or what you believe God is directing you to do? Alright. Ooh. Okay, there's a few good locations here. I really just walked into him, huh? And the Bible is not supposed to be pleasing to people. The Bible isn't supposed to be... That's not its purpose. That's not its goal. It's supposed to be moral truth. Again, it's supposed to be religious truth. Existential truth, if you will. So, my point here is nobody should ever be trying to rewrite what the Bible says in order to be more pleasing to people. You may very well want to please people. That is a good thing, generally. But that doesn't mean you should be sacrificing your morals, your ideals, your religion for the sake of doing so. As nice as that might be for some of the people. As much as people may appreciate it, that, you know, I'm not sure God does. Okay, I'm not getting any closer than that. It's probably gonna kill him anyway, sure enough. Well, I tried. So, although, again, I do understand there are... Hey, nice. There's a bit of a spectrum, a little bit of a spectrum to... Oh. To beliefs regarding homosexuality in the Bible that nobody should ever themselves try to rewrite what the Bible says or claim that the Bible does say something when it doesn't. That is the first point I want to make. And a related point is that ultimately, whether it's sexuality or anything else, you know, a lot of... Wow! Wow! And I swallowed it. And we finally have a luck-based tear effect. Okay, I need to pay attention here. This is looking pretty good as a candidate. Oh, it wasn't. Okay, well, I have one more chance if I want it. Ultimately, all sin is a question of authority. You know, God says what is right and wrong, and whether or not we do it, whether or not we follow God's rules, is up to whether or not we respect God's authority, regardless of what he says or how he says it. I'm not sure where this is. I'm evidently not great at guessing this. You know? I don't think it's here. Yep, not here. Well, cool. The petrified poop. There goes my inner child, I guess. Bye-bye, inner child. It went poof. I will take 48-hour energy on the off chance I get 2 items next floor and I can absorb both of them. Wouldn't that be nice? There's another point I could move to that is a little better. Well, sure enough. Huh. Absorb. Damage and fire rate. Okay, I did have more fire rate capacity. There were better points to move to for me directly after that, but oh well. I mean, the luck would be nice. And it is a mom item? How many mom items do I have? No, the knife doesn't even matter for me, does it? I have 1 mom item. And I think that's it. Yoink. More luck anyway. And range. Actually, huh. That's kind of funny. That was also kind of funny how pitched down it was. Get him, meat boy! I have a laser too, and mine bends. A lot better than yours does. Whoa. Anyway, my points are out of order here. I should have organized this better, but I'll come back to some better points in a minute that make more sense relative to the previous topic. But next thing I want to mention is the reminder. I've mentioned this before, but sin, biblically, is a little distinct from evil. Evil isn't really talked about biblically, but it can be understood that the biblical perspective on sin is not so much that it's evil, but more that it is pitiful. It is something you're not supposed to do, but it's not necessarily because it's this great moral evil of yours. More like, hey, you stop doing that, it's not good for you, sort of thing. That is generally how sin is portrayed, and so keep in mind that when talking about homosexuality being a sin, it may fall into that category of just being something that's pitiful, not being a moral evil, and therefore not deserving any hate at all. At all, ever. And certainly, nobody should hate their neighbors. And actually, that goes into another point that I'm going to hold off on making for another minute here. So, I'm just full of out-of-order points today. Get 'em, meat boy. You can do it, meat boy. Next point I want to make is that, you know, a lot of people do feel very strongly about homosexuality being listed as a sin in Christianity, obviously because, you know, they don't want it to. It's not a choice for most people, unless you're bisexual. Kind of. I want to make it clear that the modern understanding of sexuality, even among Christian churches, is that it is not a choice but that it can certainly be a temptation for people, and it is not your fault if you are tempted. The question is what you do with that temptation. And so a lot of Protestant churches, non-progressive Protestant churches, tend to say that if you have same-sex attraction, then what you should do is strive for a life of celibacy. That you are still welcome in the church, you are still very much a Christian, but that you, since it is a sin, that you should abstain your whole life. Which is a big ask, and so a lot of people feel that is very unfair. Which it is unfair, and it is far from the only unfair aspect of life, even from a Christian perspective. Because there are also other natural sort of temptations that people can have into sins that are, again, very unfair. There's a big disparity between people in terms of what they have to sacrifice in order to... Can I sneeze on you? I can. What exactly is asked of them to be sacrificed in order to live a holy life from the Christian perspective. For example, although this isn't quite as potent of an example, if we consider something like some sort of addiction or even just chronic gambling, that's obviously not something, a condition a person wants to find themselves in, but they may still find themselves in it regardless, and it can greatly destroy their lives. It's obviously not something they want, and yet it is a temptation that people still have to deal with. And some people are more prone to gambling or certain addictions than others, and it has nothing to do with race. So there are, my broader point there is that there are other natural temptations that people can have that can also be devastating to you, that can feel extremely unfair and feel like a whole lot more is being asked of you to live a holy life than other people. And maybe that is the case. I can't prove that it's not. But homosexuality is far from the only example. The next thing I want to point out is 1 Corinthians chapter 5 verses 12 through 13. So this is just actually a chapter before Paul mentions homosexuality in passing. But in this chapter, in this section, in these two verses specifically, to put it in my own words, what Paul says here is that Christians are meant to judge those inside the church, not those outside. It is up to God to judge those outside the church. And I wanted to mention that as an important and relevant point, because there is a lot of hatred and uncomfortableness with people from within the church focusing on people outside of the church, you know? It's incredibly, incredibly tragic and cruel and wrong to do so. If you aren't a Christian, then nobody who is a Christian should be judging you or hating you for your lifestyle choices. If you are a Christian, things change because, you know, you're submitting to a common authority, and then, you know, if you're making light of that, that's kind of a problem. But if you aren't a Christian, you aren't subject to what Christianity says is right or wrong. And also, literally, right here, explicitly, Christians are not supposed to judge people outside the church. I understand that many do, and I would sincerely like to be able to apologize on their behalf. I don't think I can, because that's just not something that's a single person is capable of doing. That would be something that an entire congregation or denomination would need to do, is apologize for their actions against the gay or LGBTQ plus community. But there should be no condemnation of people outside the church. Absolutely not. Absolutely. And if you ever do meet a Christian who is hateful towards anyone who is part of the LGBTQ plus, then please kindly direct them to that verse, to those verses. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 12 through 13. Next point I want to make, we're almost done, is that Paul actually advocates celibacy above anything else. Paul Paul has a kind of negative view of marriage. I mean, he says it's good, he says it's sanctified and all of that, in order to not sin, you get married, that way you can have sex without it being sinful. Sure, Paul says that. Right, but also Paul says that being single for life, being celibate, that's the way to go. That's the way to live your life. That way you have the most time and resources to devote to God. That is Paul's perspective on all of this. And it is important to keep in mind that it is not actually the Bible that pushes romance or marriage or having children that much. Yes, it is sort of a commandment, but it's a general commandment, not a specific you should have children commandment. That is not what it says at all. It is instead our culture that pushes the idea of romance and having a family as the ideal, as peak living, as the goal to strive for. And if you don't have these things, if you aren't on track to have these things, then your life is worthless. That is not something our culture ever means to say, but it is something our culture says a lot. It's something our culture accidentally says a lot. It's all over the place how great romance is, but in reality, from a biblical perspective at least, that's nice, but it's not all that. It's blown way out of proportion here. And so when this is one of the points that I said earlier would have been better to move around, to shuffle around so that I talked about them in a better order. But what I mean is that when it feels like this is asking a huge amount, this is asking for an immense personal sacrifice from people who are who experience same-sex attraction. From a biblical perspective, it's actually not supposed to be asking that much because, again, Paul himself advocates celibacy above getting married. So, yeah, getting married is something some people want to do, but it's not supposed to be, from a biblical perspective, the thing you stake your entire life and personal value on. Not at all. So, I don't know. Maybe that's not much of a consolation to you, but it's not so. Even if you're asked, hey, in order to be a good Christian, you need to not get married, that shouldn't be that drastic of an ask. And, with more people single today than, like, ever before in human history, then, great, I guess. Now, the final point I want to make on this, and this might take a few minutes to explain, but to summarize it, when we get to heaven, it won't really matter whether or not homosexuality was sinful or not. Let me cough just a second. Okay, my little avatar picked that up, but the recording shouldn't have. So, if you think about our actions in life, as well as the possibility of homosexuality actually being a sin versus not being a sin, but it got lost in translation, then we have 4 potential outcomes. Kind of like a Punnett square, or talking about error types and statistics, type 1 and type 2 error, although there isn't really a random chance here, so it's not really appropriate to say type 1 error, but still, or type 2 for that matter. There are 4 possibilities. If you, assuming you experience same-sex attraction, and you indulge that in your life, then you consider whether or not it truly is sinful, or was it not sinful but just got lost in translation somehow? If we look at those two possibilities, then what we see is that obviously if you if you marry if you're in a same-sex relationship, let me put it that way, and homosexuality is not actually a sin, then of course it doesn't matter. Everything's good. You can enter heaven just fine. There is no problem. But I don't think that possibility to be very likely because, in my opinion, the Bible is fairly clear that homosexuality is a sin, which leads to the second option there, the alternative, that it is sinful, but you've lived a life where you don't really care that it's sinful. And although that does not bar you from heaven, mind you, it may make it difficult to enter. And I don't mean from a purgatory standpoint, because I'm not Catholic, and even if I was, I'm not sure I'd believe in purgatory. As weird as that sounds, the Protestant Reformation happened for a reason. Let me put it that way. But if you live a life that is sinful, regardless of what that sin is, and then when you die and have the option to go to heaven, if it is indeed an option, although this gets to, heaven and hell interpretations and stuff, but my personal belief, at the very least, is that it is an option that's given to you. Basically, do you want to go to heaven or do you want to go to hell? To go to heaven means to submit yourself to God in all things, but it's heaven. And to go to hell means you don't submit yourself to God, and in fact, you run in the complete opposite direction of him. Hell isn't necessarily a torture chamber, but again, this is getting into the concept of hell, which I talked about previously. Refer to that episode. But if you live a sinful life, again, regardless of what that sin is, it may be difficult to want to go to heaven, even if you are given an explicit choice. So obviously that outcome is bad. So I've talked about two possibilities so far. I've talked about, if you live an indulgent life and then whether or not it actually is a sin. Those are the two possibilities, but it's the other two that are far more interesting and worthy of discussion here. Because if you don't live an indulgent life, if you have temptation for some sort of sin, for example, you experience same-sex attraction, and you think, well, I don't know, maybe I don't know 100% whether it is a sin, but it's better to not indulge myself in that regardless, just to be on the safe side because I don't want to sin, because I don't want to offend God, which is the general recommendation of the Bible, is, you shouldn't try to offend God. Then the two possibilities that remain are, whether homosexuality is a sin or not. And if you were tempted by homosexuality, and it is indeed a sin, then when you enter heaven, the belief then is that you will simply never be tempted by it again. You will still perfectly be you. You will be more you than you've ever been in heaven. It will still be heaven and paradise and all of that, but you will no longer be tempted by it. So this life is then an endurance test, in a way. And then we have the alternative. What if you live a life of abstinence, of celibacy, despite your, say, same-sex attraction, but then you go to heaven and find out that homosexuality was in fact not a sin after all. It was lost in translation, that it wasn't supposed to come across as a sin. Well, then you have the entire rest of eternity to enjoy that in a way that is, sanctified, that is pleasing to God. Marriage itself is, it transforms radically between what we see on earth and what is said about marriage in heaven. So if homosexuality isn't a sin, then in heaven it may look kind of different from what it's like on Earth, but it will be sanctified. It will be part of you, and it will be good then. And the important perspective here is that you have an entire eternity waiting for you. It's just the temporary now that you have to show self control and have self restraint in order to please God. And of course, no one here is forcing you to please God if you don't want to. At least no one should be. If you don't want to be a Christian, that is entirely your choice. And that is a choice that I wish everyone would respect equally. But even if no one else does, I want you to know that I do respect that decision when people make it. Everyone has their own reasons. That doesn't mean that I am not a Christian or don't have faith in Christianity, but that I have faith in other people's abilities to, think for themselves and decide for themselves what they do or don't want out of life. So again, broadly speaking, the Christian perspective here is then that it's better to assume that homosexuality is a sin, even if you aren't 100% confident, and even if we're wrong about that, even if it isn't a sin after all, you have all of eternity waiting for you. And this is arguably one of the hardest aspects of Christianity to grasp, is that this life is temporary. I mean, the fact that life is temporary isn't hard to grasp, but that there's an eternity waiting for us after, ideally in heaven. And so, we should be living our lives day to day with that perspective in mind, and also especially, sharing the gospel, bringing other people into that same paradise eternity with us. Not by force, of course. And that will do it for today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something today. Please let me know if you have any dissenting opinions on this, or different perspectives or experiences that are relevant, or you just want to say hi. I don't know. Comment whatever you want, really. But do please let me know any feedback that you have for today. I have tried to be as thorough and respectful as possible. I recognize that my awkwardness has maybe been, in talking about this topic, has maybe gotten in the way of saying clearly what I wanted to say in a few moments today, but I hope that in general I did a decent job. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.